Scott Kramer. I'm Clio's Director of Information Security. Been with Clio for about 3.5 years. We have a great gift today to be joined by Mike Allen. Mike has recently transitioned to found Allen Law, and he also has an organization called 416 Consulting. So to help you all with preparation, to prevent cyber incidents from occurring, and also to work with you in collaboration when those bad days do occur. So if you join me, please, welcome, give a round of applause for Mike Allen.
Good morning, thank you. We're here to talk about the future of cybersecurity and what you guys need to know. My name is Mike Allen. I am a practicing attorney for the last 23 years. I am also an entrepreneur, and I've started a company called 416 Consultancy. Basically what 416 does is we do education and training for groups like this, for lawyers, for accountants, for other groups that need to have some awareness of cybersecurity and kind of don't know where to start. So let me give you a quick disclaimer in the beginning. So even though I am an attorney, I may be not your attorney. Even though I am a consultant, I'm not your consultant. I may talk about some people and companies today. Those are not endorsements, and the opinions expressed up here today are my own. So thank you all for coming. Let's talk a little bit about this. So who cares about this stuff? Cybersecurity. And you're going to get that when you go back to your firms, when you go back to talk to people after being at ClioCon. You're going to get people who say, okay, cybersecurity, who cares? So let's give you some ammo to talk about. So there was a infamous bank robber back in the day, FBI's most wanted, and he was the gentleman bank robber, if there is such a thing. And one of the questions that he got was, why rob banks? And his answer was, and you guys have all heard this, because that's where the money is. So let's flash forward to law firms. So in 2016, you guys may have heard of this, there was the Panama Papers leak. And so there was an email breach at a law firm down in Panama. And it was both lawyers' worst day ever and clients' worst day ever, because there was a disclosure of financial information and basically a ton of privileged information for several companies that were represented by this law firm. And what this showed was the type of information that law firms have. So this was a big tell. This basically showed that law firms are the new banks. That's where the valuable information is. That's where the information is that you want if you are a hacker. So the bar associations have realized that this is an issue. So from the ABA, there's the new Rule 1.1, which, getting right off the bat, Rule 1 talks about lawyers needing to have a certain knowledge and skill, and they've added this section that talks about the benefits and risk associated with relevant technology. And the important thing to notice in this is that it talks about the benefits and risks associated with the technology. Because not all new technology has endless amount of benefits without a certain level of risk that comes with that. Some of it is necessary, some of it is something that you need for your practice to be better, to keep up with the current state of practice. But it does have some associated trade-offs with it. So the ABA has recognized this and has imposed this as a rule for lawyers, is that you need to know the benefits and risks of relevant technology. So who cares? You care. You care about this because you're lawyers, your clients care about this, your reputation cares about this. So when you go back and people say, well, why do I care? Here's some reasons why you care. There's great news here, and that is that lawyers are particularly predisposed to be great at cybersecurity. So why is that? There's a group of professionals that do what's called applied cybersecurity research. And that group did some studies, and they found out that the best folks at dealing with information security includes lawyers. Because you're a lawyer, you're already going to be great at this stuff. So when we're lawyers, we're trained at certain things. The first one is issue spotting. We're trained at noticing what is a potential problem, what is an issue that we need to address, how can we get these things onto our radar to know that they're an issue at all. The The second one is determining the best course of action, and that's something that we do to advise our clients and to figure out of a lot of uncertainties and a lot of different paths we can take. There may not be a single right one, so what is the best one that we can take to move forward? We're also really good at evaluating risk. We're disposed to tell our clients, this is something that's very risky, I think you maybe need to do it. This is something that's too risky for you, this is something that you should avoid. So we're really trained to kind of give that evaluation and give that level of advice to our clients. A lot of us work in practice areas that involve an adversarial process. So we're used to us not wanting the other guy to be able to do what he wants to do, and the other guy trying to prevent us from doing what we want to do. So we're already in a circumstance where most days when we go to work, we're already looking at a situation where the other guy's going to try to keep me from doing what I need to do, and I'm going to do the same thing to him. That's kind of the key of cybersecurity. Lawyers are curious folks, and they have success because they are curious. We ask a lot of what ifs, or what happened next, or how did that happen questions. So when we go through those things, that mental exercise of being curious and trying to figure out how do things work, what happens if, what happens next, those are great things for cybersecurity folks to take on. It's really good because lawyers do that naturally. And the last thing is, we have zero trust. Lawyers are the best trust but verify group out there. Like, I heard you say that, but I'm going to verify that. I'm going to check that out. I want to know for myself that these things are true. So lawyers have all these skills built in through our education, through our training, through our practices that make us really good at doing the kinds of things that are needed for cybersecurity. You're going to see this a lot today, and this is something that I really want to kind of beat into everybody's heads a little bit. My threat model is not your threat model. And what that means is cybersecurity is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's not something that there is something I can take off the shelf and it's automatically going to work for all people across all different models. So let's talk about what a threat model is. A threat model is basically a listing of your assets. It's what things are important to me and then what can possibly happen to those things that are threats that could cause a problem to them. We do that as a practice every single day. We go through and we figure out what is important to my client, what are the things that my client needs, and what could potentially cause harm to those, and how do we protect those. So that's essentially threat modeling. Again, something lawyers do every day. The difference here, and just like for your clients, one threat model doesn't fit somebody else. They're unique for each client. They're unique for each set of assets. They're unique for each set of threats that that client would face. In cybersecurity, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We call it FUD. And what happens is you'll be able to spot these because it usually starts out with a, did you know that? Or have you heard that? Did you know that they can hack your cell phone from space? Have you heard that if you click on one link, they can download all the data from your firm and put you out of business? It starts out with that kind of fear. And the did you know or have you heard puts that uncertainty in your mind. Have I heard this? Do I know this? And then it causes you to doubt your own security methods. You may have great cybersecurity practices. You may have great policies and procedures set up. But when you hear these things and you see these things, it starts getting into your head a little bit of like, am I doing the right thing? Is my cybersecurity okay? Am I doing the right stuff? Did I miss the thing where they can download all my stuff and take my business away? So we want to recognize FUD for what it is, and we want to avoid it. For me, I see a lot of this when relatives will send me emails. And at the bottom of it, it'll usually be a link from either Facebook or Fox News. And it'll say, did you know that? That's FUD. Watch out for that. Okay, be aware of it, recognize it for what it is. And I love this quote. You've got to keep it in the back of your head that no matter how much they try to use that FUD on you and try to get you to a point where you're anxious or don't know what's going on or have that doubt and uncertainty, it doesn't make any difference on what's actually going on and what's actually going to happen. So you can be completely nervous and have so much anxiety about, am I doing the right things? Is this, that? If you're doing the right things, it doesn't matter how nervous you are about it. Again, my threat model is not your threat model. And so one way to respond to folks when they say, did you hear that? Do you know that? Well, that may be a problem for you, but that's not my model, right? That, yes, those could be things that could happen, but that's not my threat model. And so all you need to do is focus on what is going to be your exposure for your set of assets and for your particular set of threats or risks. Maybe. Okay. Shiny new things. Everybody likes shiny new things. Shiny new things are also a big thing in cybersecurity where they want to sell you stuff because it's new and it does this new thing. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to evaluate shiny new things to figure out whether that's something that you really need or if it's just a shiny new thing. Shiny new things are great because they work on everybody. I have a shiny new thing. Did I need a new watch? Absolutely not. Is it shiny and new? Yeah, it's cool. I got it. It happens. And it's not to say that you can't go after the shiny new thing because they're cool. But you need to put that in your analysis and you need to understand, even though it's cool and even though it's new, is that something that really improves my position, improves my cybersecurity posture, or is this just something shiny and new, does the same old stuff, or maybe even does it worse? You guys remember this old chestnut from law school? So this is called the calculus of risk. And basically to break it down, what it talks about is a burden or a B, and it talks about whether it is greater than or less than P&L, which is the probability something's going to happen, and how bad it is if it does happen. And what we use this for as lawyers, or a variation of this, is it's a way for us to go ahead and kind of take these anomalous risk things and put them into some kind of a calculation or package that we can make a decision on. Are we doing the right thing or not? And the way this analysis works is you decide that if the burden of implementing some kind of new cybersecurity policy, procedure, or program outweighs the likelihood that that specific threat or issue is going to happen to you versus how bad that is if it actually does happen, then maybe you don't do it. Because one of the key things to remember here is that even though we're learning about cybersecurity, want to implement that in our practices, it's not what we do for a living. Well, some of us, but it's not what we do for a living. It is, we practice law. We service our clients. We provide legal services. We give advice. We do those things. Managing your IT, managing your cybersecurity isn't necessarily your key product or key service that you offer your clients. So you need to take cybersecurity and evaluate it in a way that it is something that doesn't distract from your practice, doesn't make your practice so hard that you can't service your clients, but still meets that level of risk. So for example, if there's something that's a very high probability of happening, has a very high potential cost, then even if that burden is a little high, we still have to go through it. We still have to take those steps. If there's something out there that has a minuscule chance of happening, and even if it does, it's more of an annoyance, but the implementation costs of that are huge, then we just probably shouldn't do it. And again, that's going to depend on where your exposure is. My threat model is not your threat model. Does your unique situation require that level of burden because it's your threats, or does it not? So if you haven't figured it out by now, what we're talking about is risk management. And that's something that we as lawyers do well. And it's really the key to cybersecurity is there's always going to be a level of risk. There's always going to be something out there that we have to deal with. How do we manage that? How do we put policies, procedures into play? What steps do we take to make sure that we are managing that risk the best we can? It can't be to the point that it paralyzes our practice, paralyzes our ability to practice law, but it needs to be at a level that we are providing a layer of security that matches the risks and the threats that we're facing. Again, my threat model is not your threat model. Okay, so what are some steps for protecting you, which in turn will protect your firm, which will in turn protect your clients? The very first one, and this is an easy one, is use a password manager. And I know there are two groups of people out there. There's one group that absolutely loves password managers, and they say, I don't even know my own passwords. They're in the password manager. I just know the password to my password manager. And they've gotten a lot better. They're very convenient. They're kind of wonderful. I absolutely recommend them. But a password manager doesn't mean that it has to be an online password manager or an app or something along those lines. There's the other group of folks, and I'll take a step up from the sticky note on the bottom of the keyboard, folks. But there's another group of folks that says, I don't trust password managers because they're online and they have a password to them and this and that. What if somebody hacks my password manager? Then they have all my passwords. So these folks, and there are plenty of them out there, will have these password ledgers or journals where they'll have all their passwords written down, and then maybe they lock them in a drawer, they keep them on their desk, they hide them, whatever. And again, different levels of threat, different models. So sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's not. If you have that kind of fear and uncertainty, maybe we can take a little bit of an extra step and make that even more secure. So we talk about salt, and what salting is, there's a technical term for salting, but I'll just talk about it this way. What salting is adding just a little bit more to that password file that makes it even harder for somebody to have any benefit of if they take it. So for example, you can have all of your passwords listed in your password ledger, but then just know in your head that you have an additional set of letters or numbers that you add to the end of every single one of those that makes them unique and that makes them something that even if somebody took your password book, they're never going to know. And you can put them on the front or the end or whatever. The cool thing is with your password managers, you can do the same thing online. You can type in the first couple characters of the unique thing that only you know, and then have your password manager cut and paste and fill in the rest. But you've added that extra step, that extra layer to your protection that even if something bad happens, even if they hack your password manager, even if somebody steals your journal, you've still got that extra layer of protection built into that that makes it useless to them. And that, again, that's key for us here because the idea is that burden of adding just a couple extra characters to the end of your password ledger, that's easy. That's no extra effort at all. But it's something that reduces the risk of the huge harm that would happen if somebody actually stole your ledger or if somebody actually hacked your password manager. Back up your backup. A lot of folks will tell me, yeah, we have a backup, it's the cloud. We back up to the cloud. Cloud is just somebody else's computer. Are they backing it up? On mission critical systems, there's a saying, and it's basically 2 is 1, 1 is none. And what that means is if you have 2 of something, then you can rely on it as if you have 1 of them. If you have 1 of them, you can't rely on it because if anything happens to it, you've got 0, you're dead in the water. So the same thing for backups. If you're going to do a backup, you're going to back it up locally. Back it up locally, also save a copy of the cloud. You can do that with backups for the cloud and local. You can do them geolocation. You can say, I back up to a place over in California. I back up to a place in New York. So if something happens to either one of those places, I'm still covered. I'm still able to recover and get back up. Backups are not flawless. You can have errors in your backup. You can have a power surge. You can have a data corruption. You can have all these things. You can have malware that gets backed up with your backup. These things can happen. The way you mitigate that is you have backups of backups of backups. And you'll see that a lot of times with the software programs that do this. We'll take an archive of a day or an hour, a day, a month, a year, those kinds of things. You have multiple layers there. So just be sure when you're doing backups that you're not just putting all your eggs in one basket on your backup, but that you're backing up your backup. Ad blockers. So a lot of malware is still transmitted or gotten into through ads. It is a problem because it's kind of an unregulated system where they are throwing ads up through aggregators all over the place. So even the companies that are doing the ads maybe necessarily don't know where they end up at the end and don't know what path they've taken and what's been put into them before they reach the consumer or the user. Everybody hates ads. You hate the pop-ups, you hate the blinkers, you hate all that stuff. So use an ad blocker. You don't have to see them. And the cool thing about that is you can't click on a link that's not there. You can't click on an ad that you don't see. So use an ad blocker, get rid of them. Client portals. Email is not secure. Email wasn't designed to be secure. It wasn't meant to do the things that we do with it today. And certainly not lawyers with us attaching documents and moving client confidential emails back and forth. So one of the ways to solve that is to use a client portal. Shameless plug for Clio, but they have a great client portal and I use it and I really like it. So find a portal or find some way of document management that you can take those critical documents and take those critical communications out of email. Email is a very large attack surface. It's a very large vector for people to get into, and if they do, it's a pretty big harm once they do. Again, email is not built for that, so use a client portal. A lot of folks will say, well, if they hack my email, they won't get anything because I do inbox zero. And I know that's a good joke amongst lawyers because we all have zero inboxes at the end of the day and go home happy. So we have folks who will say, well, we use inbox zero. We don't keep anything in our inboxes, and so we don't have to worry about it because if they get the email, they don't get anything. And I was talking with a colleague, and they said, we did a response, and the sent items was what they were pulling stuff from. And basically, think about this. Even if you clean out your inbox, nobody's going around saying, oh, hey, I cleaned out all my sent items today, too. Nobody does that. So your sent items have all your communications to your clients. It has all the documents that you've sent them. It has all of your confidential information in there, or your client's confidential information. So just be aware that that doesn't need to be a thing. It doesn't need to exist. You don't need to have that exposure or that attack vector. Go ahead and use the client portal. Your documents stay where they stay. Things go through the portal. It's a secure communication with your client. Your client's communications to you are more secure because portals are built to have that security where email is not. Secure your networks. And I love the picture that I found on this one because it looks like it's secure because it's got two locks. But if you look at it, only one of them is actually doing anything of holding the chains together. The other one's just kind of hanging out. That happens a lot. There are 3 networks that you're going to want to secure that you're going to use. The first one is yours. Your network needs to be what you need to operate your practice, your law firm. It's your computers, it's your drives, it's your printers. Everything that you need needs to be on your own separate secured network only for you. Only for you. When you have guests come over, clients, other attorneys, court reporters, whoever, they need to be on a separate network away from all of your stuff. The network they need to be on is a guest network. Has limited access, has zero access to your systems, but has limited access to other stuff. And then finally, the last network you need these days is your IoT network, your network for your things. Those little IoT devices are super, super helpful. They're very convenient, they're wonderful, and generally speaking, they have crap security. They're rarely updated. They're rarely kept up to date, even if there are updates available. Sometimes you don't even know how to update them. But they live on your network, and what happens is people will plug them in. And you need to make sure that those have their own network, again, separated from you, separated from your guests, isolated so that they can't cause any harm to anything else. Multi-factor, and you will hear this from everybody, and this is by no means difficult, and it is literally the most bang for the buck you can get. If you're not using multi-factor authentication, you're kind of asking for it at this point. I really liked this picture a lot better because it shows 3 separate locks, and that's kind of how multi-factor works, is that even if you get one, you still have to get the others before you can get access. And the way it works on this is, with the 3 locks, is the first one's your password. The second one is the password that you have to get into the device that has your one-time code. And then the last one is your one-time code. So you have this defense in layers. You have these multiple factors that people have to go through. So again, if someone steals your journal and pulls your passwords out, even if you didn't salt them, even if they figure that out, you still have this other layer out there that's going to prevent them from having access to your systems and being able to get into your stuff. So multi-factor is silly easy, and that's what everybody needs to do. This is the one that I will hang my hat on and say, I kind of don't care what your threat model is, use multi-factor. Okay, so throughout all of this, you're going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen. There is going to be a link clicked. There's going to be a network misconfigured. There's going to be an issue because, again, this isn't what you do for a living. You are not IT professionals setting up networks and running cybersecurity. You're lawyers. You're practicing law. You're helping your clients. There's going to be an error here and there. And I know lawyers hate hearing that and say, I'm never going to make a mistake ever. You're going to make a mistake. It happens. The mistakes that you're going to make these days are probably going to be related to a phishing attack, a phishing email, or an email compromise. So phishing, we know, is the one where we get a link, we click on it, and it's got some kind of urgency, some kind of demand that you need to do this today, which works great with lawyers because we always freak out and are like, oh, did I miss that? Or you've got a document. Like, yeah, I probably do have a document. I get those all the time. I probably forgot about it. So phishing is a big one. Email compromises are more ones where there is another actor in your system, and usually they're replacing things such as wiring instructions or invoicing instructions or bank account information, where they're trying to intercept a payment or make you to make a payment to the wrong place. Why do these happen? Why are these the ones that are still among the top of all of the breaches and all of the lists? It's because they work. These are the types of things that are going to work on almost everybody given enough time. And this is because cybersecurity is a people thing. So a lot of folks like to think about this as a technological thing or something that deals with flaws in technology or some kind of issue with how networks are configured or systems are set up. Cybersecurity is a people thing. It deals with psychology, it deals with human nature, it deals with how people work. Phishing doesn't work on computers. Phishing works on people. Business email compromises don't work on computers, they work on people. It works on our human nature, it preys on the psychology of how people operate, the urgency, the things that people want to do to get stuff done. That's how that stuff works. You need to remember that cybersecurity is a people thing. And so when you're setting up your systems and when you're talking to your staff, the same people you're going to go back to and explain to them that they care about this stuff. You need to remember that it is a people thing. There are human failings. And so you need to have a system, a culture, something that continues to remind people to get this top of mind, that this is a new thing. This is something that we just need to know as part of our interactions, as part of our practice. This is something that we do, and this is how we do these things. I've seen other groups that try to say, well, we do this testing. We have cybersecurity testing systems set up where we will send fake phishing emails internally and then see who clicks on them. And that's fine. That's great training and that's good education and awareness. But then the next step of that is, yeah, we take the results of who clicked on stuff and we post it in the break room. And so there's this public shaming to, oh, well, oh, Joe, you're so silly, you clicked on the link. Don't do that. Don't do that. That doesn't work. What you want to do is include folks into that conversation. You don't want to out anybody individually. You maybe take that person aside and have a conversation and say, we're going to talk about your password usage, or we're going to talk about how quick you click on things. But don't do the public shaming route. I've started to see that more and more, and I would say that that's actually not productive and actually makes things worse. So just remember, cybersecurity is a people thing. There are human failings. You're going to do your best efforts. You're going to work through this, but just have the understanding that the reason why these are set up and the reason why there's these levels of attacks for clicks or other things like that is because they work and they work on just what makes us human. So just keep that in mind. So the key, if this is going to happen, then what is the key to survival? As many times as you get knocked down with this, as many times as you have a breach or have something happen to where you're having problems with your system or you have unauthorized access, you have something you have to fix, all you need to remember is that as many times as you get knocked down, you just have to stand up one more time. It is literally all about resilience. It is all about, if these things are going to happen, we are going to have these problems, how do we stand back up from this? How do we get back to a point where we are now able to recover from these things? And the goal is going to be, how can we recover more quickly from these? There are some issues that will cause you to be down for an hour, some for minutes, some for days. And you need to evaluate your risk and figure out what makes us resilient. What timing do I need to get back up to service my clients before bad things start to happen? So if we're going to be implementing these procedures and trying to figure out what's going to work for us and what can I do to be better at cybersecurity, you're going to need to rely on vendors because, again, this isn't what you do for a living. And how do you know which vendors are worth it? How do I know who to select that's going to be a good vendor for me? So the first thing you can do is find out what other users are saying about them. And you can ask other lawyers, you can look online, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but just get a good evaluation of what people are saying about them. It's the same thing as when you're looking to buy something on Amazon and you're scrolling through and looking at 3 different versions of the same thing. What's everybody saying about this? What are they saying that is good about this, bad, whatever? It's not the determinative decision for you, but it's something that you can do to figure out, okay, folks like this one, folks don't like this one. Maybe I'll look at this. Again, I'll evaluate what works best for me. The other thing is to check out what engineering says. And so we had a situation where we were advising a client and we talked to the C-level executives and it was a compliance issue. And what that means is if they're doing certain activities, there's a higher level of compliance needed, more steps they have to go through to be compliant versus if they're not doing these things. So we go in and we talk to them and we say, okay, are you guys doing this, this, and this? And from every one of the execs, it's like, nope, absolutely not. No, we are not. Totally not. So then we got to go talk to the engineers, the people that actually made their programs work. And we said, hey, we talked to the C-suite and they said, you guys don't do this and this and this, so we can just skip over that. And one of them looked at us and said, are you kidding me? We do all of that. What do you mean you do all of that? They're like, how do you think any of this works? We absolutely collect the data. We absolutely use it this way. We absolutely don't store it securely. So talk to the engineering folks because the marketing and the C-suite and the other folks will give you different answers based on business models and things that they want you to hear. The engineers will tell you how it actually works and how it actually links into your systems. And so it's really important to make sure that you're not just listening to the marketing, you're also going into the technical side from the engineering to figure out what's under the hood and how does this work. Again, we talked about being lawyers and having the skill sets that make us really good at cybersecurity. So one of the things to evaluate is what does your gut say about it? Do you just not feel good about it? It just doesn't seem right? There seems to be an issue for that. Trust that. Go with that because as lawyers, that's what we do. If something's going on with a client or we get some information, it just doesn't seem right. I can't tell you why it just doesn't feel right. Trust your gut on this stuff. That will serve you well. The last one is something that is kind of a recent trend, kind of ticks me off, but it's one of those things, and it's basically there are vendors out there that will provide you with cybersecurity services, or they'll provide you with services that have security as part of the service they're providing. They will market to you as best-in-class security, or we have these levels of security, and if you look at it and your analysis stops there, you're like, okay, that's fine, that works, that makes sense. What you may not notice is that some of those available security products or implementations only come at the higher levels of the product. And so there may be certain products that have an enterprise model or an enterprise level. That level has certain levels of security that the consumer level or the lower levels don't. You know, the plus, elite, pro, enterprise. So one of the questions you need to ask is, how big do I need to be? How many users do I need to have to qualify for these other levels of security or protection? Or how much do I need to pay? How much does my spend going to be in order for me to get the protection that's advertised? So those are just a couple of questions. On this slide here, and you can just Google this, it's really easy to find. But there's a whole listing of questions there. If you want to dive deeper into that kind of what questions do I need, how do I vet my vendors, this is actually a pretty good list. It's pretty exhaustive. It goes through really anything that you would want to know on how to evaluate who's a good vendor and who's not. So how do you stay on top of this stuff? How do you figure out what do I need to look at? How do I stay aware, kind of keep this stuff top of mind other than once a year going to a presentation or a seminar or getting something? Number one is your insurance carrier. And as we all know, the business model for insurance, and it's a great business model, it is take money in, don't pay money out, right? It is great. So what you need to do is kind of lean into that and use that to your advantage. So your insurance company doesn't want to pay money out in claims. You are the sources of those claims. So your insurance carrier is already predisposed to help you not have exposure, not have cybersecurity issues. So lean into that, get that information from your insurance carrier. Insurance carriers are having a real hard time with evaluating risk and appropriately underwriting and pricing this for cybersecurity. They're having a heck of a time with it. Use that to your advantage. They are very willing now to help you not have a loss because that fits their model of money coming in, money not going out. The other half of that is you're already paying for these benefits through your premiums. You're already paying for this stuff. So go ahead and exercise it and use it. Contact your insurance carrier. Do you have resources? Do you have best practices? Do you have stuff? A lot of them do, and they'll provide it to you. And I guess before that is have cybersecurity insurance, have that on your policy. And I know most of them do now in your business policies, your liability policies, but just make sure that that's something that you have. There are a lot of online resources through different nonprofits, government agencies. One of them is Fight Cybercrime. This one has a focus more on the criminal aspect of what you may be looking at, and so it deals with things like the phishing or the business email compromises, things of that nature. There's a lot of information in this, and there's also different programs that you can take to learn more about what's going on. Have I been pwned? I love these guys. So basically with this one, what you do is you enter in your email address or your username. And what it does is it goes and looks at the databases of information that's for sale online. So once people do a data breach and they steal all your information, maybe, if your information is included in that, they will send you a notification saying, hey, your email address is one of 24 million that was exposed in this hack or through this agency. And it tells you basically where it came from. A lot of times this site will have that information and will be able to send you an email about it before there's a disclosure from the company that actually had the breach. Because what they do is they look for it when it's already out there on the market and potentially for sale. Doesn't mean it's actually sold, doesn't mean there's actually been a breach, but it is your email address shows up on a list with all this stuff that people are saying that they say they got from your old, online account. The Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency is a new governmental agency, and I guess I can't say new now because it's been around for a little while. But there are a lot of resources on this. The government has recognized, especially with regards to infrastructure, but the government has realized that there is a real need for cybersecurity protection. And so there are different programs through this site that you can find out. There's different resources that you can use to kind of stay abreast of things and get caught up. Coalition is a company that produces what's called the Cyber Threat Index. And what Coalition does is they do some research and find out what are the different threats that they're seeing that are active on the internet. The interesting thing with Coalition is it doesn't necessarily give you these are the ones that are successful, these are actual breaches. It does more of like, these are what the folks that are trying to commit these acts are using, are doing. This is the trend that we're seeing. These are the threats that are out there. This may be complete overkill for a lot of folks, but it is interesting reading just to kind of see what's going on there, even if you don't really dive into the technical side of it, just to see the levels and the kinds of attacks that are going on. Verizon does a data breach investigations report, and this one's a little different because this one does the investigations after the breach has already occurred. and it kind of does a post-mortem deep dive on how did this happen, what were the issues, what would be best practices for fixing this going forward so that you don't have the problems again. This one also has a lot of technical information in it, but it's also interesting just to see these are the types of attacks that occurred, here's what's going on, here's how they mitigated them, or here's what needs to be done to mitigate this kind of attack in the future. And then this is really low-hanging fruit, but there are a lot of cybersecurity professionals that are on Twitter or X or whatever it is these days. These are some that I follow that I think are wonderful. Again, not an endorsement, but these are basically folks that you can read through and kind of see their posts and see what's going on kind of in the industry and just what they're seeing, because they are professionals that deal with this stuff as well. The other thing with these folks is that, at least for the ones that I follow, there's an unusual amount of lawyers that are also cybersecurity professionals. And so you'll get, as a lawyer, you will benefit from that because they can't help but kind of talk to you and talk to that audience in a common language because they're lawyers too. That's my chat. Let's do some Q&A because I know there's a ton of questions on this stuff, and I know that I probably went through a sliver of the stuff that you're interested in or have questions about, so happy to answer any questions